Hi everybody, we are live here from Toronto. We're just going to wait a little bit to make sure that people are joining, and then we're going to call Jason Whitmore from Jason on Sax. I know everybody has a lot of questions for Jason, so we're going to get him on the line right now and start a little bit of an interview. So right now we're live here in Toronto. We're at the Légère Reeds studio. So this is where we record. See a little bit of the studio. And we're just going to get Jason here to jump on live. And I know there's lots of questions for him, so we'll just get it started here. Okay. So we're just waiting on Jason here to join us, and we'll start some questions. And if you have any questions for Jason, make sure you write into us in the comments. I'll be trying to read the comments at the same time. Hi, Jason.
Hey, Julie, how's it going?
Good, how are you?
Great. Glad to be here.
Yeah, so Jason, you're joining us from San Diego, right?
I am in sunny San Diego, yes.
Yeah, so we are in different weathers and different climates. So let us know where you're joining from in the comments below. Send us where you're watching from. We love to see. So Jason, we have gotten a lot of questions for you. So I hope you're ready to answer.
Let's do this.
Great. So first, I guess, walk us through how you started playing the saxophone and what got you into the instrument.
Well, I've been playing since I was 11 years old, started in 6th grade band, and, you know, like a lot of kids do in traditional public school music programs. To be frank, there was nothing like big that happened in my life or no major influences that drew me to the saxophone. It was kind of just a whatever choice at the time.
Yeah.
Seemed like a cool instrument, you know, and I wasn't even really very good to start with. It was just kind of one of those things a 11-year-old did, you know, amongst everything in life. But yeah, I stuck with it, thankfully, and, you know, through high school, and then when I got to college and decided to study music as a profession, that's when it really became like a part of me. And, you know, and by then I had a lot of musical influence, and I really learned how much music meant to me. So.
Amazing. So you studied on the classical side. You then went to university and studied classical saxophones, which I think is something that a lot of people don't know, especially if they follow you on Instagram, because your scene now is very different from that. So why don't you tell everybody a little bit about what you do now and how you got started?
Okay. Well, so, I mean, I've been a professional saxophone player since I was 18. I started playing in, you know, like some big band jazz, and was playing in a lot of other live music, rock bands, a lot of blues and funk and R&B, and you know, traditional band kind of settings. And after I moved to California, a few years into the new decade, early 2000s or so, my wife and I were at a club in Las Vegas, big typical dance club, DJ playing, and there was a saxophone player playing along with him. And it was the first time I'd ever seen it in that setting. And I really initially thought, like, that's how odd, but also how interesting and cool and different. And at the time, I was really into, you know, a lot of the DJ electronic dance music, and I had a lot of friends who were DJs or club promoters, so it was kind of an easy scene to connect to. So, you know, I talked to a lot of my friends and just said, hey, why don't you let me come play sax on your set a little bit, you know? And it started gradually just through my kind of local network of friends who were in that scene in San Diego, and then it's grown quite a bit, you know, 15 or so years later since then.
Yeah, that's amazing. So we got a bunch of kids, especially in high school, that wrote into us to ask you sort of if you have any advice for them trying to break into the scene when perhaps they don't have as many friends or as many connections as you did. How can they maybe get started?
Great question. I mean, the first thing is, I think if you're going to play in that kind of musical environment, is you got to enjoy the music. You know, if you're really into it, then you're just going to naturally gravitate towards like hearing the natural, you know, progression of the sort of the structure of that kind of song, that kind of music, and the role that you can play to make it better. You know, because you're playing on top of a piece that somebody's already produced. They've already decided, okay, this is the best that this song is going to be, and you're trying to add something different that wasn't initially intended. So
Right.
you kind of have to think like a producer and think like a songwriter, and like, okay, how would I have a sax added to this song and make it better? You know, so one of the keys, and I would tell everybody this, is don't overplay. You know, in this style of music, no matter how advanced of a player you are, like simplicity is always a good place to go. So keep your ideas simple, somewhat repetitive. And, you know, you have to hear sort of the shape of the music. You know, in dance music, there's not a lot of chord changes or a lot of variety there.
Yeah.
The variety kind of comes from an intensity level that, you know, that sort of grows through the song. There's the drop, you know, that everybody refers to in the style of music. So you have to like hear and kind of predict that shape of intensity through the music, and then shape whatever you're playing to that same sort of structure. And so being able to hear that and sort of predict where it's coming from, you know, because it's not like you're nodding over to the drummer or to the bass player like, okay, this is where my solo is going to end. You know, it's like it's kind of predetermined, so you have to predict where that's coming from.
For sure. I just listen to a lot of the music too, right? I can imagine that just by training your ear a little bit more, you can then improvise a little bit easier when you're on stage. So that's something we tell people too, just to listen to the music that you want to play, because then you get both sides of the equation by listening and then by playing.
Absolutely, yeah. It's a lot easier to just focus when you're take the horn out of the equation or the instrument and just listen and kind of imagine how you're playing. I mean, in the early days of improvising of any style of music, I've always been taught that you start by taking your instrument out of the equation. It lets your mind focus on just hearing what's happening and imagining what you would do, and then you connect the dot from that vision to actually executing it on your instrument.
For sure. I mean, and that's huge. I think another big question that we got from a lot of people was, how do you practice? Because especially in this style, right, of playing where you're playing something different and exciting every time, how do you then come back in the morning and say, okay, I got to practice my skills, or I got to, you know, what gets you motivated to do that every day?
Well, it's funny. I mean, at this stage of my life, it's, you know, it's different. I juggle a lot of things, you know, through life and family and music, and, you know, there's all styles of music that interest me, you know, and when I practice a lot of different styles of music.
And that's huge for everybody, right? To keep it moving.
Yeah, well, it's, you know, it keeps your mind working. Like, you have to exercise this muscle as much as anything else when you're practicing. And so you really stretch your thinking when you're practicing, you know, outside of your comfort zone, or just in, you know, variety of styles. So when I'm practicing, I mean, sometimes I'm practice just like classical music, rudimentary stuff like my scales and arpeggios and things. Sometimes I'm practicing jazz standards, and I, you know, play along to like some jazz play along records. Sometimes I'm just practicing a cappella by myself. Sometimes I'm practicing over house music and, you know, dance music that I may be playing at a club or at a festival. So yeah, you gotta keep your mind fresh and playing in all those environments. And I think it all contributes to just being a better listener and a better performer.
That's great advice. And I think, so something really big that's happening now, more so than ever, I think, is musicians have to become a bit business people. They have to market themselves, right? And I know you know a lot about that. So for those of you that are tuned in and don't know this, Jason actually just played for the Lakers game last week. He played the national anthem, so that was huge.
Go Lakers!
Yeah. So let's kind of discuss a little bit about how you got to play something so big and how you market yourself as a musician, whether it is in this EDM club
Yeah.
scene or just as a traditional saxophone player. I know you particularly use Instagram a lot. So
Yep.
if anybody has specific questions we got a little Raptors fan down there. I agree. We're from Toronto here.
Yeah.
But
All right.
so if anybody has questions for Jason specifically about how to market yourself, how to network, please write them below. We'll try to read as we go. But Jason, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you do to market yourself as a saxophone player?
Well, I mean, clearly social media is probably the most obtainable platform to, all of us today. And it's one of the most important things you got to do. I mean, there's more fundamental things. I mean, if you're a professional, you got to have a website. It's got to have, your basics there, your contact, your bio, any recordings, your schedule. People expect to see something that is that's regularly updated. So you gotta stay on top of that.
And
but,
that's the thing, right? Because we see a lot of times musicians that are fantastic, and then you go to their website and it might say, next gig January 2013, and you're like,
yeah, hello, right? Update that.
Exactly. So this constant update of online presence is huge, and something that I think a lot of people have been asking about. But it's just about, I guess, continuing to keep your presence alive.
You have to keep it updated, and you have to keep it fresh, or people are just going to assume you're not active, you're not busy, or you're just not relevant anymore. And right or wrong, it's just a necessary evil. So,
For sure.
I mean, I like to look at it as it's also a great way to kind of keep me focused on working. Like, if I know I've got social media content I've got to put out, I also know I got to practice. So I'm kind of marrying those two. It's a great way to like put myself on a schedule. Like, I need to go in the studio and work out a new cool recording of this song. A, for me to, because it's fun for me, B, because it's good practice, and then C, because it's good content for social media and lets people know that I'm actively working, I'm performing, I'm recording. And you have to keep up with that. And fortunately, all those things are kind of married together. So it kind of keeps you on the straight and narrow,
And that's great advice, I think, for people who don't necessarily have a recording studio to go into. You can do this from your living room, right? Like, you can set up your phone, and first of all, it's great practice to listen to yourself play. Anything. So, you don't have to go live like we are, but just hit that record button, and then you can keep putting it out, so then people see samples of your work, and it keeps you on the straight and narrow. Let's practice daily or every couple of days.
I tell everybody that. I mean, the classic example, last night I was in the studio, and I was just practicing. I was practicing jazz standards, and I was playing my tenor, which I don't play as often because I just want to try to stretch myself a little bit. And I was working on a standard, and I must have recorded myself playing it 15 different times. I didn't post any of it, but I listened to it, and it's telling, and it's important. So you don't need a major big studio equipment. Like, set your phone up, record yourself playing, and listen back to it, and then do it again and listen back. And that's probably one of the easiest tools that everybody has access to. And then when you get something good, post it.
That's right? To keep it going and to show people. I think Instagram is a great tool for musicians today because it's free, and the amount of essentially word of mouth that you can get just with hashtags and things like that is huge. How did you get started? Was your Instagram always intended to be musical, or was it your personal Instagram and then you kind of decided to move towards that?
I think by the time I got on Instagram, it was because I was already really dedicated to music, and so it was naturally going to be a very music focused. But if you're going to have a successful marketing strategy, has to be diverse, and I know this to be true, that like your Instagram feed can't be all one note, pardon the pun, but I mean, you have to, like, people are going to be interested in the human being, not just the saxophone player. So I think it's important to sprinkle in a little bit of your personal life. What are you doing? Who are you with? Your personal interests. And from a social media marketing standpoint, it's got to be authentic. So if it's all about only one thing, it's not really that authentic, or No,
and I think that's true also for people that are wanting to hire. a saxophone player, because they're looking through Instagram feeds regularly now to see who are we hiring. And if I, for example, see somebody who has a bit of that human touch, and then you can kind of get a sense of personality even through social media, which I think is huge. Because part of getting gigs, as all of you guys know, are musicians, is that you have to have a good personality, because you can be the best player in the world, but then if you're not responsible, if you don't show up on time to these gigs, if you don't follow up, which is really big, you know, hey, how was the gig? How did I do? Let's talk about maybe rescheduling. You're not getting that call back, and I think that's really big.
Yeah, people like people that they can relate to. So if you show, you know, a lot of different sides of you, not just your one, you know, focus or your one business, you'll be more relatable, you'll be more likable, you'll grow your following, and like you said, you'll be a more attractive, you know, artist to the venue or to the promoter or to whatever it is. So
for sure. So that's to, I guess, encourage all our followers who are either live or will watch this later, but to don't be scared if they right now have 50 followers on Instagram. That's how we start, right? And if you're putting out content as if you have 10,000, 20,000 followers, then one day you might get there a lot quicker. So I'm just going to pivot the conversation a little bit, because we've had a lot of questions about particularly your altissimo. People want to know. They reached out to us in advance, and I've seen some in the comments right now. So your altissimo has become your bit of a signature move, if you will, signature sound. So why don't you tell us a little bit about how you get that altissimo so clean, and just a little bit about how you got started and how you notice that people finally, they say, yes,
okay,
we're talking about it.
I have a secret. It's altissimo juice. Drink it, and that's all.
That's it. Okay, everybody, it's been swell.
Yeah.
No.
All right, thanks everybody. Clearly there's no like one single answer. And yeah, I like to express myself through the full range of the instrument. But I mean, I started working on my altissimo range a long time ago. Sax players, you might be familiar with, there's the Top Tones for Saxophone. It's a Sigurd Rascher book. It's not very big, but it's still out in publication. You can get it, and it's got a good fingering chart and some good exercises. That was, I think, the very first thing that my fellow sax players and teachers turned me on to. But you know, you start slow, start playing your scales through the middle range of your instrument, just crossing into the altissimo, and then cross a little bit further and a little bit further. Do it really slow. Always sit in front of a tuner when you're doing this. And remember, like I make this analogy when we're practicing to fitness a lot, because I'm also really interested in fitness. But like, you know, you look at a weightlifter, you don't just say, this is how you deadlift 500 pounds, and then he goes, oh, okay, and then he does it. No, it's not just about knowing what to do. It's about training your muscles, the strength and the muscle memory, to where you can do it clean and you execute it. And the same with the saxophone. It's you can't just be told what to do and then you do that and it works. You got to build these muscles. You got to build your muscle memory and train your ear to work with those muscles. So, you know, start with your scales and your arpeggios, gradually go into the lower part of the altissimo range until you're really, really extending it, and just be patient. Be patient. Sit in front of a tuner.
Don't be afraid to fail, right? Don't be afraid to try it and squeak, or try it and for it to not sound great.
It helps if you have like a nice soundproof practicing area, so you're not like, you know, waking up animals from miles around.
That's right. But I mean, people, I think, are a bit scared of that altissimo because it's easy to fail. And I think that what you're telling people is great, because it does take time, and that sort of fitness connection is good, because you're right. It's not like you can say, okay, this is how the fingering works. This is, you know, what you need to do. Hit it, because it's not going to happen that easily. It's about practice.
And building that muscle strength and the muscle memory. And I got to tell you too, and you didn't ask me to say this, for the record, everybody, but honestly, like, since I've been using Légère Reeds, because they have so much more resilience and they're always so much more consistent, it definitely definitely has enhanced how easy my altissimo range is. So if you're not using, I mean, you got to have a good reed. That's a given, no matter what. But I mean,
For
if you
sure.
haven't tried Légère, they legitimately, that's where like I feel like the biggest difference and the biggest improvement, because I can rely on it standing up to that level of vibration and that pressure, and it definitely helped that into the range.
I mean, that's great to hear. And what we like to tell people is that sometimes, so first of all, I should note, Jason plays our signature series cut. I'm just going to do a quick, there we go, so we can see it here.
Yeah.
That's it. So what we like to tell people is also when you're playing Légère, what happens is you know that the reed is always going to work. So when you are trying to hit something new like altissimo and it doesn't sound good, then you know it's maybe an embouchure or an air problem or something within you that you can fix. When you add another, a reed that might not be so good to the mix, what happens is you're not sure, was that me? Was that the reed? What's going on?
Yeah.
So it's a good teaching tool, especially if there's any teachers here listening, to get your students on the Légère reed. Then what happens is, okay, that doesn't sound right. It's the student, or it's something that we can work towards fixing when you take that out of the equation, which I think has helped a lot of people.
Yeah.
And I'm glad to hear it's helped you, and because I know we got a ton of questions about that altissimo, because it's definitely your signature. Now,
well, you mentioned the teachers really should consider it too. I have two sons, a 10-year-old and a 13-year-old, that are both playing saxophone.
That's amazing.
And yeah, it is. And so I naturally, it turns out like the reed that I use works great strength wise and for the tip opening for their relatively beginner level mouthpiece. But that has made teaching a million times easier, because we're just removing all the uncertainty and the inconsistency that's inevitable with cane reeds out of the equation. And it just makes that learning process so much easier. So I'd encourage teachers, young musicians, use them, because it's just going to make your life a lot easier. And you'll get to learning, you'll get to a better sound a lot quicker. You'll be more successful and just be happier. So
I mean, that's amazing. I just want to check here a few questions that we got in for you. Somebody says, I'm a new sax player. What are the best tips for me to get that perfect embouchure? And perfect is a word that was used, and it's something that I think we might need to discuss here. But any tips for that?
Gosh, it kind of goes back to that fitness analogy. Like I can tell you what you got to do, but you're not going to know it until you train those muscles. Part of it is literally the physical strength inside your jaw and your ability to hold your corners in really tight for long periods of time. Your ability to really open the back of your throat and allow for a nice thick airstream, which is going to be conducive to a nice, rich, full color sound. Yeah, and your lip takes a lot of beating as a saxophone player. Your teeth dig into that bottom lip. So if you're brand new and you're like, my lip is constantly hurting, it's just because you're young and you've got to build the strength and build the endurance of that embouchure. So I wish.
So what you're saying essentially is practice for people, right? And
I know that nobody wants to hear that, but that's the reality. Just think about it as like every time you practice, you're lifting weights, you're building those muscles, you're strengthening yourself, and that doesn't happen overnight. It happens over a long period of consistent, times of practice, and you'll get there. So be patient, be consistent, and just keep at it. I mean.
That's good, and it's good I think for people to hear that even professionals still practice, because sometimes we think, when we make it, we're done practicing, and that's not the case. Once you make it, you're almost practicing more probably, right? Because then the gigs get higher pressure.
Yeah. I mean, you get called to play in a group and play music you've never heard before, and you got to all of a sudden make yourself familiar. You've got to like cram that in. Yeah, it's all like school study time all over again.
For sure.
It never ends. But the funny thing is at this stage of my life, like I can't practice enough. Like I want to practice. Like I really enjoy it. Like that's where I feel like I'm at peace and I'm doing something productive, and it's the most gratifying on a very personal, selfish level. So I enjoy it, and it's
Great.
ironic because now at this time in my life when I'm busy with so many other things, you know, trying to make that time and make that happen is my challenge. So while you're young,
Everybody
and you
try
have
and
time.
enjoy, try and enjoy that practice while you can. Okay, Jason, this has been great. Is there anything else you want to kind of put out there? I think those are the questions that people have been asking.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, first of all, thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, I mean, like all of the whole Légère family, you guys have been amazingly supportive. I'd like to go on record because I get asked about your reeds all the time, and you know the equipment I use and everything. And I've been fortunate at this stage of my life to have the support of some great companies like Légère. But I absolutely came to you, and you know I would never endorse anything that I didn't want to use and be 100% willing to use with or without an endorsement on my own. And that's how it was, you know, our relationship began. For the people that are listening, you know, I was looking for, you know, something that was better in a reed, and I tried everybody, and I gave you guys a really long tryout period with several different reeds, and it was, you know, it was indisputable that was the best for me, and it wasn't for years later that, you know, we sort of formed the relationship. But you guys have
thank you so much, Jason. I mean, it's an honor that you play our reeds, and I know people ask you all the time, so it's great to hear that from you. And thank you so much for joining us, and I'm sure we'll do this again sometime. There will be more questions, and if you have any questions for Jason or for us, make sure that you write to us. You can DM me or Jason at Jason on Sax, and listen to him play. He's amazing. So thank you so much, and we'll speak to you soon.
Awesome. Thanks, Julie. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. I know there was a quick question here that I'm just going to answer, and that's whether we make double reeds, and the answer is absolutely. So we make oboe reeds and bassoon reeds. Our oboe reeds come in 3 different strengths. So that's medium, soft, medium, and medium hard, and they're European scrape. And then our bassoon reeds come in 2 different strengths, and that's medium, hard, and medium. And yes, so if you have any more questions, make sure that you DM us or write to us. Make sure that you follow. We'll keep doing this, go live with more people. So let us know who you want to see live, which one of our Légère artists you want to listen to. So thank you so much for tuning in. Speak soon.